explosions, I immediately see it. I'm like, usually when I see things like this in my mind, I want to refuse to believe that there is anything there. Happened when the war started in Iran. I'm like, no, there must be nothing. No way Trump is attacking, because I want to sleep. It's at 4:30 in the morning. But I start seeing reports of multiple explosions all over Telegram, and various people are posting about it. And we post about it as unconfirmed as well, as usual. We include the sources. And then we get other reports of missiles being fired from Kuwait, Larry. And then we get, so that's explosions across Iran, missiles from Kuwait, and fighter jets over Iraqi Kurdistan and Iran. So it's like multiple signals that something's going on. And there's a NOTAM as well that was announced the day before, that morning as well. And we know about that already. And there's a rhetoric in Israel about killing Khamenei. Today, the defense minister made the statement outright. He said, we're waiting for the green light to kill the Khamenei dynasty. He said that explicitly, and he said also destroy Iran's energy infrastructure. That's today. But that happened yesterday. So I get up and I'm like, okay, they should be an attack. My partner goes to me, she's like, Mario, like, should I be worried? I'm like, because I've always been told that, I'm telling you that, I'm the optimist. I'm like, look, the war's over. I think it's over. I keep saying that. Yeah. I'm like, look, it looks bad, but I'd be shocked if there's an attack. Maybe there's a certain assassination attempt against who they believe is not accepting the deal, something like that. Turns out what the facts happen, fog of war. Later, what we found out within minutes afterwards, that the air defense systems were being tested. That's what the Iranians said. And the Israelis immediately said, we're not in the air. The Americans said it wasn't us. Actually, the Americans didn't comment. The Israelis did. And then it turns out there was reportedly air defenses in Iran are being tested. Fighter jets, the MiGs were up in the air because, in response to the threat, the potential drone threat, something, or as part of the drills. And there was drills as well in Kuwait by the American Air Force, all simultaneously. So you put all these together, and lastly, there was a video of a helicopter in Iran. People thought it was a drone. So you put all these together, it was like unfortunate circumstances. And it happened again today. 2 hours ago, there were explosions in Iran. Right. And then turns out, according to Iranian sources, they were intercepting drones. That's what they said, quadcopters, about 2 of them in Iran. And they seems to be their fingers on the trigger. They're expecting something, especially when you see rhetoric from Israel. The defense minister is always the one that just destroys my mood. When he makes a statement today, he's like, we're waiting for the green light from the Americans, Larry, to destroy the Khamenei dynasty, and then to push Iran back to the dark ages, blow up their energy and electricity facilities, and crush the whole economy. That was by Defense Minister Katz. So yeah, you put all these together, and I don't blame the Iranians to be on edge.
Well, Katz is a putz, to put it into Yiddish terms. He really a dough-faced, spineless, mass of meat with no military experience, from what I understand. A big, tough talker. But, this is the reality is, the more I listen to Donald Trump, I don't know if you heard his press conference here in the last.
I didn't know. I saw the clips come in. I was doing it live, but I saw the clips come in.
It's, the deep down, he's looking for a deal. He's looking for a way out. And I think he sort of previewed it as he's going to take claim that he has secured that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, and that'll be the deal. And then with that, they'll exit, because he keeps going through this litany. I've destroyed this and destroyed that. He's destroyed the Air Force. Then what were those MiG aircraft that were flying around? Were those imaginary planes?
Exactly. And he destroyed the naval force. And we saw yesterday the 34 or 36 small boats, the speedboats that Iran had patrolling the Strait of Hormuz, and they used them to capture a few ships as well.
Yeah, they're called bog hammers, I believe. They've and they were laying mines last week, copious amounts.
And even apparently today as well, there was a report that even not only last week, they might have been laying them as early as this morning.
Yeah, and then here's Trump saying that there are U.S. mine sweepers in the Persian Gulf and the Strait. No, there aren't. That's just not true. But he continues to confabulate and say things that he thinks are true, even though they're not. So Iran's holding the strong hand, and the United States holds a weak hand. And the odds are this is headed towards the United States is going to come out with a negotiation where they'll declare victory, having eliminated Iran as a nuclear pursuer of nuclear weapons.
whenever we've been, doing shows for a while, and you always see me try to, whenever there's a kind of an argument being made, I'm like, what if this or what if that, or kind of giving the counter argument. I'm starting to struggle in this because it's, there's certain limits to being able to make those arguments. Sometimes there's an argument to be made, but sometimes unless you fabricate something, there's no argument to be made where this is not a horrible strategic loss for the US. You could be MAGA first, the stars and strips all over your shirt, and be American, supportive of the American military, and so a hawkish person, but still have to admit the reality of what is happening. And I made a post. I said, Iran's Navy, I was in a post this morning, said Iran's Navy is lying at the bottom of the sea. Their air force is demolished. Their anti-aircraft and radar weaponry is gone, and their leadership is no longer with us. The blockade is airtight and strong. Meanwhile, last night, Iran had MiGs flying in the air, as we said. We had the fast attack boats, 33 of them. 2 hours ago, the air defense systems intercepted drones. And yesterday and today, their radars were being tested. And there was also talk, it's interesting. There's one analyst in Iran talking about how the tests that are being done of their air defense systems right now are to develop like a mosaic structure for their air defenses. So if the command and control structure is struck, they still have the ability to intercept aerial threats. So that's being developed as a way to deter maybe a future attack. Because if you're going to attack them, it's focus on the command and control. That's not going to work now, even with their air defense systems. So that could be part of the testing that they're doing. So yeah, I made a post saying that the reality on the ground, and the cargo ship, there was a cargo ship was reportedly arrived in Iran after crossing the Gulf of Oman under the protection of the IRGC naval boats. So the IRGC is more than one report now, is starting to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah. Well, this is, the claim that Trump made earlier today that there were 2 minesweepers in the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah. I mean, that's just not true. If any U.S. ships stray into the strait, they will be blown up. They will be sunk. They'll be destroyed. So, but Trump persists, and I don't know how much of the blame falls on him and how much falls on the intelligence community, because he is now pushing this line that, the leadership, we don't know who to talk to in Iran, and is once we get a precise proposal from them, then we can figure out about negotiations. Well, they got the precise proposal 2 weeks ago, Tuesday, with the 10-point plan. There's nothing confusing about that. It's all very clear, written down, and the demands are quite specific. And as far as this mythology that, and this is typical of a CIA information operation to try to convince people that there's really a division between the IRGC and the rest of the government. Well, Ghalibaf, the head of the legislature, what did he do before he got in running the legislature? He was with the IRGC. And so his words have reflected what the IRGC is saying. Arachi, who was not a member of the IRGC, but his words complement, reflect, support what the IRGC and Ghalibaf are saying. So here's the West desperately trying to create this narrative that, the reason we can't get a deal is because we don't know who to talk to. Well, no, the reason they can't get a deal is because Trump's unwilling so far to make the concessions that Iran is demanding, and Iran is not going to back off of those demands. That's the thing the West is going to have to come to understand. So
yeah, there were reports by Saudi sources, pro-Saudi, anti-Iranian sources, that Ghalibaf, Pezeshkian, and Arachi were placed under house arrest, and negotiations with the US are halted by the IRGC. And then what we saw today, so those rumors, Trump said something similar in the last couple of days, as you said. We don't know who we're talking to. And today, a lot of them posted the same thing. I think it includes the ones I've just mentioned. A lot of them posted the same statement, something showing unity. I'm not sure if you saw their post, but kind of dispelling those claims. But I'm not finding anything. The only weakness I'm finding on the Iranian side, Larry, is the blockade by the US of their ability to export oil. Because if that blockade, which is not working. And you've explained that on the show, and we've seen also a lot of reports of ships going through, especially ones heading to China, which most of them are.
Yeah.
But that blockade, if it is enforced properly, that would fill up their oil reservoirs, their storage facilities for oil, and they'll have to shut off their wells. You know, we've talked about this early on in the war, but when it comes to the Gulf, but then the Iranians have to shut off their wells, and that would cause temporary and even up to permanent damage in those facilities. And to be able to reopen them takes a long time. So that could be the only weakness that Iran has, especially knowing that their economy struggled under decades of sanctions, and we saw the protests in January. So that's the only card that the US, probably the best card, not the only, but the best card that Trump still has. The only problem is the global economy can't sustain it.
Well, not only that, but that entire scenario is based on false assumptions. Assumption number one, that Karg Island, if you block them at Karg Island, that's their only way to export oil. There's no other way, and those oil wells will fill up. No, that's just not true. You know, if anything, they can even fill up tankers and drive them to other locations in the country. That's number one. But this notion that they're going to collapse the Iranian economy. Oh boy, we got them right where we want them. Yeah, we've had 35 years of sanctions on Iran. They've held up okay. Things aren't as great as they could be. I'm not suggesting that they've been clicking on all cylinders, but it hasn't crushed the economy. And then we got the Cuba example. Cuba has faced equal, if not worse, sanctions. They're in a far less advantageous position than Iran. And, the United States, after 66 years, the economic pressure has failed to achieve the change in Cuba that the United States wants. And as we've talked before, Iran's got the advantage that Caspian Sea, boat ride to Russia, Turkmenistan, they have free access across that border. Pakistan, that's
being able to import.
Yeah.
I think the problem though is being able to export oil. Minimal. There's no land-based facilities to be able to export, and their other port, the Bandar, I forgot what it's called.
Bandar Abbas.
Yeah, that's their other export. That one has significantly less capabilities of being able to export oil. So that's the only. So that's like but that's not being enforced either, though. Trump is not really enforcing the blockade, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally.
Well, it's because we don't have the capability.
Yeah, you've explained
the United States doesn't have enough ships. Let's put it this way. If Iran didn't have drones, short-range ballistic missiles, coastal defense cruise missiles, then yes, the United States could bring ships in, they would have enough ships to block the Strait of Hormuz. But the problem is, with all the offensive capability that Iran has, they get blown out of the water immediately. So, let's put that Strait of Hormuz is like this point where my fingers come together. And then just like a pizza, as you go out farther and farther and farther away from that point, which the United States, for those ships to be secure, they've got to go out about 400 miles out. 400 to 500 miles out. They can't be that close to the Iranian coast, or they'll be attacked and potentially sunk. Well, then all of a sudden, the ships you don't have enough ships to cover that area, and so basically, my understanding is like 40 ships have come out, and the United States has intercepted 4. Okay, so they get 10%. This is just like think of drug dealers. Drug dealers do a shipment of cocaine or heroin or fentanyl or whatever, and the police seize 10% of it. All right, cost of doing business. 90% goes through, and the 90%, was money in the pockets of the Iranians, money in the pockets of the Chinese.
Talking about the Chinese, he did say in his statement, "We're leading China in AI. We're leading everybody in AI." But there's nothing significant he said in the speech. I'm just having a look now. How long are you willing to wait on Iran? He said, "Don't rush me." And then he did a post earlier today. He also said maybe they loaded up a little bit during the 2-week hiatus, but we'll knock that out in one day if they did. So he's talking about loading up in terms of, I think, military capabilities. He's talked about that yesterday. They have all new leadership, and they're fighting like cats and dogs over who's going to be in control. And that's what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
He's talking about Iranian leadership being
Yeah, and that's
that's
Israeli intelligence being fed in there. It's just it's lies by Israel.
We're seeing that same thing. The whole narrative of you strike them once, a decapitation strike could lead to regime change.
Yeah,
Obviously,
they're collapse right away. Oh,
they're collapsing from within. We've created a real mess for them, and they've created a mess for the world over the last 47 years. We've hit about 75% of our targets. We stopped a little early because they wanted to have some peace. We have a blockade that's 100% effective, and they're getting no business. They want to make a deal. By the way, what's funny is that the reports of ship going through and IRGC announcing the ships going through happened while Trump was giving a speech of him saying the blockade is 100% effective. They want to make a deal. We have been speaking to them, but they don't even know who's leading the country. They're in turmoil. They came to us and they said, we agree to open the strait and all my people are happy. Everybody was happy except me. I said, wait a minute. If we open the strait, this means they're going to make $500 million a day. I don't want them to make $500 million a day until they settle this thing. So I'm the one that kept it closed. We have total control of it. And it will open when they make a deal or something else happens. If they don't get their oil moving, their whole oil infrastructure is going to explode because they have no place to store it. That's what we're just talking about. We've never had so much ammunition. Our ships are loaded. I call them locked and loaded. They're locked and loaded. They're ready to go. We have much higher quality equipment than we did when we first started. The equipment was upgraded in a month, Larry. At the CIA, tell me more. What facilities did you have in the CIA when you were there to upgrade military equipment within 4 weeks? How did you guys magically do it so fast?
Yeah, it didn't exist. So,
and then last question he asked. I'll give you the last comment. He said, "What if oil goes to 200? I think there's nothing worse than a nuclear weapon." What?
Yeah. So what
he talked about a nuclear weapon?
What he's saying is that his efforts, he's going to succeed in negotiating. He's going to succeed in negotiating with Iran, that Iran will give up any plans to get a nuclear weapon, and therefore the American people will be happy to pay $4 a gallon for gas just to not have nuclear arms in Iran.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an entirely manufactured narrative on his part. The Iranian embassy, and actually Iran has got, I got to tell you, they got some incredibly creative people when it comes to information operations. The Lego videos they're putting out, and then I just received a cartoon, so it shows two uniformed IRGC guys, wearing helmet, camouflaged, and the one IRGC guy has his right hand on Donald Trump's left shoulder, and he says to him, "We aren't reopening shit, bro."
Trolling. Did you see also another one that, how Trump said he asked Iran not to execute a few of their prisoners, and Iran said, "We have no prisoners we're planning to execute." And then the next day they've released a photo of 6 girls. They're like, "Hey, Trump, these are more prisoners that will be executed tomorrow. Please, everyone, ask Trump to save them." And the girls were like all AI faces, AI generated faces, all of them the same girl's face, and like different makeup, different hijabs, different color hijab, trolling Trump. So he was asked, though, I know we talked about it last, would you use a nuclear weapon against Iran? He said, no. What a stupid question. Why would I need it when we've totally decimated them without it? A nuclear weapon should never be allowed to be used by anybody. So what's your conclusion out of everything? I've read some of it, but you've listened to it. I've read it for the audience, of that press statement and all those statements he's making, including the fact he reposted an article, Larry, of the Washington Post. The headline was, Trump doesn't need a deal with Iran to achieve his objectives. In other words, Trump doesn't need a deal. He'll just walk away with nothing. He's fine walking away with nothing. But what do you make of all this putting it together? Does that change your perception of where Trump stands on this war? Is he accepting the reality of the situation?
Well, I don't know if he's accepting it. I think he's at least acknowledging it. There's a difference. And I think in that press conference, he actually showed what his exit ramp is going to be. He will make the declaration that he has got assurances. He's negotiated with the Iranian delegation, and he has got assurances that Iran will not build a nuclear weapon, and that Iran will allow permanent international atomic energy inspections of its nuclear site. And without addressing about military bases, without addressing ballistic missiles, he'll use that as the declaration. And if Iran accepts it, Trump will leave. Now, this raises the issue of the Iranian demand about U.S. bases have to be closed and moved out. The fact of the matter is most of them are closed already simply from the damage they've incurred during the first 5 weeks of the war. So that's sort of you don't actually have to have an official declaration, oh, we're closing up. They've been closed up in a de facto sense. So they might decide just to, leave that off to the side. But the other key thing for Iran is still going to be the sanctions have got to be lifted, and not at some point in the future. Sanctions are lifted now, and the blockade is lifted. So, Trump, he may do a couple. They're doing enough photo ops. They may do another. We captured another oil tanker, and then declare victory and say, okay, we got victory. We're going to leave. That'll be the optimal. I would hope that would happen, but Trump's behavior is so erratic. Now, I did receive news from somebody who is in direct contact with people in the Trump administration that both General Kane and John Ratcliffe, the director of the CIA, are increasingly pushing back on Trump and letting him know that no, you can't do this, and you have to be aware of what the threats are. So they're becoming more assertive, and hopefully that will finally reach Trump. But he's the reports within are a very erratic personality. Now the good news is, I think, I had heard, and I passed it on Monday on Judge Napolitano's show, that at the Saturday meeting, with the emergency meeting that Trump had with his national security advisors, Trump floated the idea of using nukes, and General Kane shot it down, and then that thing took off. That became a meme. It went viral. And I didn't have any independent confirmation of it, but it sure seemed to make sense. It was in line with what Trump was talking about, ending the civilization in Iran. Nuclear weapons are a civilization ender, not, they're just nothing to be trifled with. Well, apparently that message has now hit home to Trump, and he understands, okay, I can't say that thing. That's why he came out, I think, so strongly today saying, no, never use a nuke. Good news. That's great. That's a move in the right direction. That's what we want to hear him say. But, he's still, I don't know if the intelligence community is lying to him, or if he's just ignoring what they're saying and creating his own mythology about, oh, we've stopped all the Iranian ships from leaving. We got 100% on the blockade. We've destroyed all their Air Force, all their Navy. They're completely defeated. They're down for the count.
But that's it's a narrative war, though. I think his ability to turn something into a win politically, it's a strength. As annoying as it is for people like yourself and like anyone listening that watches these things closely, because when he says things, and I know it upsets you whenever we're on the show, but when he says things that are just so blatantly false, it is annoying. What annoys me more is when I see people believe it. It's just that bothers me. But I think we also understand that, as Roy Cohen, his mentor, late mentor, he's advised them on these strategies. Always declare victory, no matter what happens. Declare victory. Always deny. Always be on the attack. So that's kind of we're seeing that in full steam in these throughout this war.
Well, there's an interesting twist on that whole Roy Cohn story. One of Cohn's early, not just proteges, but paramours, was Roger Stone, I'm told. And
interesting.
Yeah, so this takes Roger Stone and Donald Trump back to the beginning. Now Cohn actually, the other, to show you 6 degrees of separation. My wife was the nurse manager at the National Institutes of Health, and he died on her unit. So
I remember. Yeah, you told me that.
And he was only 59. Man, he was. You can see pictures of him. He was, as they say, ridden hard and put away wet. Boy, he looked like he'd had a rough life. Life was not, life had not been kind to him. But it was his own doing. He was a nasty piece of work.
Another big piece of news that happened. Oh, by the way, what do you think of Hegseth firing the Navy Secretary? I haven't looked into that. John Fallon, have you seen that? Yeah. So the firing came during the Navy's biggest conference of the year, one day after the Pentagon rolled out its $65 billion shipbuilding budget, while more than 15 American warships are actively enforcing the blockade on Iranian ports. The backstory is messier than the headline. John had a direct line to Trump, regular Mar-a-Lago meetings, middle of the night shipbuilding texts with the president. Last fall, he pitched Trump on modern battleship program, bypassing Hegseth entirely. Hegseth responded by creating a new czar for submarine acquisition, a job that normally lives under the Navy, and making it report directly to the Deputy Secretary Feinberg instead. It was a slow squeeze. This is the finishing move. John Fallon is now the latest in a string of senior firings on the Hegseth's Pentagon, including Army Chief Staff General Randy George. Hung Kao, a Navy veteran and former Virginia state candidate, takes over as acting secretary. Firing the Navy secretary during a live blockade is not routine personnel management. Somebody thought the timing was worth the risk. So I'm not sure if you know more about this. And how significant are all these firings? Do they happen in every administration? Is it relatively common?
They've happened. I mean, look, there is no one indispensable person, number one. Number two, what I heard via Danny Davis, and Danny was in contact with somebody on the inside that said, look, it was a person. This is pettiness, personality issue. This is just one more example of Hegseth's immaturity and insecurity at the same time. This Navy secretary, he goes, okay, someone else. These personnel changes, it's like putting your hand into a bucket of water and then pulling it out. The water will ripple for a little bit and then it settles down. Because I asked people, can you tell me who the Deputy Secretary of Defense was under Joe Biden? No, I can't. Or under Bill Clinton, or go back, or pick any apart from certain positions. People remember Hegseth just because he's such a clown, and they'll remember Kash Patel. They got a great Lego video out on Kash Patel because apparently he tried to log into his computer and there was they had changed the password or something and he didn't realize it and he got upset. He thought they had fired him and just hadn't told him yet.
I haven't heard that.
Hilarious. But the reality is, something like Phelan, nobody had heard of him. His friends heard about him, but most people hadn't. And the Navy, the institutions, the bureaucracy, it moves on. So this was, again, this is more about personal, not getting along. And again, with Hegseth, to be so insecure, you'd think that, if Phelan's got that relationship, like I'd handle it by saying, hey, John, that's great that you got such a good relationship with the president. And that's a great idea, back him up. Instead of I've got to piss on this piece of property. I got to mark this territory like some jealous dog.
What do you make of, there's a report that Mujtaba Khamenei, the injuries are far more severe than previously known, according to New York Times. Apparently he has one leg that's been operated on 3 times and he's awaiting a prosthetic. His face and lips were severely burnt, making speech difficult. He would likely require plastic surgery in the future. Access to him is extremely restricted, mainly to a medical team, and the president, Pezeshkian, a heart surgeon by training, and Iran's health minister are personally involved in his care. That's according to the New York Times. Mm-hmm. Is that a possibility? Because we know he was severely injured. Yeah. That's a more logical report to me than the one about him being gay, but it is possible. But do you still think he's calling the shots?
Yeah. No, I think, look, the thing we need to understand about him and about Ghalibaf is both served with the IRGC and both were in combat. And, he was, think back what it was like when you're 17, 18 years old, which was Khamenei's age when he enlisted with the IRGC, and he fought in 4 major battles in a 2-year period. Those kinds of experiences, they form and shape your life. You develop bonds with the men that you fight alongside that are lifelong. They become more than brothers to you. I mean, it's an experience born in blood. Well, as you look at this right now, the head of the IRGC, he was an 18, 19-year-old kid back then, like Khamenei. Now, I'm not saying they necessarily knew each other, but they all come out of the same experience, and the same with Ghalibaf. So that's why I think,
it's similar to whenever you see people that have served veterans, whenever they meet each other, there's that level of respect, that level of brotherhood, even if they've never met before. You always see that.
Yeah, as long as you know that they were actually in the fight, it's like J.D. Vance may have served in the Marine Corps, but he was a press guy. He was never out getting shot at or shooting back. So, he's not going to get the same level of respect. But Khamenei is, and Ghalibaf is, and so like I said, I think we're underestimating this. Actually, there's probably more unity now within the Iranian government than there was previously before the attack.
There's also a lot of sympathy towards Mojtaba. His father just died along with his family. It's really hard to go against someone that suffered so much loss. And I'm assuming continues serving. He continues acting as a supreme leader, communicating, making statements as the supreme leader. We mentioned briefly earlier about the mines being laid by Iran, which I'm assuming they're more on the Omani side of the Strait of Hormuz. So Trump did a post today. I have ordered the U.S. Navy to shoot and kill any boat, small boat, through they may be, small boats though they may be. The naval ships are all 159 of them at the bottom of the sea. That is putting. So he's gonna balancing out the fact that he said the navy is destroyed, but he's saying to destroy their boats. So it's kind of contradicting himself. So he's kind of explaining why there's a contradiction. That is putting mines in the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. There is no hesitation. Additionally, our minesweepers are clearing the strait right now. I am hereby ordering the activity to continue by a tripled up level. Thank you for your attention. So why, there was a report that Iran is laying mines. Why they're doing it, and is it more to kind of reinforce the ownership of the Strait of Hormuz, that toll booth they have? Because their parliament just passed a law that essentially enforces their control of the Strait of Hormuz and the toll they're going to be charging.
Well, first of all, Iran laid those mines 2 or 3 days ago. I mean, I heard about it. That in fact, I was told, they said, man, they've like opened the box and just dumped everything in. So they're not going through, because a lot of times if you lay mines, you sort of map where they are and hope that they can sort of stay in that location. Iran's not even mapping, man. They're just dumping it in. So it's created a real.
What do you think is their strategy?
Well, the strategy is, and it was admitted yesterday in the testimony that DOD gave to Congress, saying, look, if the war starts today and we were able to put minesweepers in, it would take us 6 months to clear it. Minimum.
Yeah, I saw that. That's insane.
Now, but listen to what Trump is claiming. They've already got minesweepers and they're working. No, they're not. He's lying. I mean, or he's confabulating. In his own mind, he believes that's taken place, but it's not taking place, because with the otherwise, Iran would be blowing them out of the water. So
couldn't it be? But wouldn't Iran be worried about the retaliation as well? So I think both sides don't want war, and they're seeing how far they could push it. Like Iran just claimed that they escorted their ships through the blockade, and we know that the U.S. ships did not shoot the Armada, the American Armada did not shoot at those ships. There has been reports of any. Couldn't be the same thing on the Iranian side.
No.
The U.S. is pushing their luck, removing the mines, and the Iranians are also restraining themselves from firing at them.
No, the Iran's not going out to look for ships, but if the U.S. ships show up there in the area, they'll shoot at them, based upon already having intercepted Iranian ships that were well out in international waters. There are no U.S. ships that are close in to the Strait of Hormuz. So as those ships come out, it creates more of a challenge. The United States has to pick and choose which ones they're going to go after, because it can't go after them all. And that's why we've seen, out of 40, they've gotten 4. So it's again, this is political theater. This is Trump's theater to convince the American people that, hey, we're making progress with the war, and that there's still hope that there's going to be a peaceful settlement soon. He keeps playing that card. But the war, as each week goes by, the opposition to it in the United States is going to grow, not diminish. So
there's, by the way, while we're speaking, there were strikes by Israel so Hezbollah launched rockets at Tula, northern Israel. Simultaneously, Lebanese and Israeli negotiations are ongoing in Washington, and Israel retaliated by striking. IDF says it struck and killed 3 Hezbollah operatives who fired an anti-aircraft missile at an Israeli drone unsuccessfully over southern Lebanon earlier today. But that's pretty limited back and forth. It's very different to what we're seeing before. Would you give Trump credit for at least getting a ceasefire in Lebanon to last this long and getting those 2 countries to meet?
Yeah. No, but let's recognize what's going on. The Trump plan with that Israeli-Lebanese meeting, because you're meeting with the Christian officials essentially, is to bring Lebanon in as the northern force to attack Hezbollah from the rear.
Oh, that's what you think the word that they're instigating a civil war in the country. Yeah, that's the worry.
Well, I mean, look at what we've been doing now for, God, before you were born, going back to 1975. It is the United States has done very little to actually try to genuinely get all sides to work together. We've chosen sides. That's why we wound up on the side of the Marianites and the Phalangists, and and made Hezbollah the enemy. What's really interesting? I did an AI search because we keep hearing about how these Iranian proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah, have killed thousands of Americans. Well, search it and look it up. Hamas is credited with killing about 56 Americans since 1987. 56. Hezbollah is attributed to about, I think it's 286.
With the barracks, yeah?
Yeah, the barracks included. Even though Hezbollah didn't do that, it was more likely Amal. But, that's a whole nother issue. Okay, so that's Hezbollah. That's total. So they're less than 400 in 46 years. Then you add in, the Shia factions in Iraq that were accused of planting roadside bombs and killing the U.S. soldiers. And again, that wasn't all on Iran, but that's how the U.S. plays it. That's another 663. Okay? So my math's not great, but we're talking roughly 1,000 total, maybe less than, or 1,100 total over 46 years. So let's follow the proxy principle. And the principle is this: if Iran funds or supports or gives weapons of any kind to a group, then Iran is ultimately responsible for what that group or organization did. All right? Let's apply that to the United States. Starting 1980 through 1988, the United States arms, equips, and provides intelligence to Iraq to attack Iran, provides the precursor chemicals used for chemical weapons. And how many Iranians die because of that? That would be over 300,000 soldiers and 70,000 civilians. So
it's annoying no one talks about this. It's annoying. It's really annoying, and I understand where your frustration comes from, is that the average person has no idea about any of this.
Correct.
And whenever the word terrorist organization has been weaponized in such a way that when you label a group a terrorist organization, you cannot say anything objective about them, because then, you're supporting terrorists.
Yeah.
And even in some countries, they start becoming kind of illegal. I was just talking to, how there is an interview is going to be published tomorrow with an Orthodox Jewish rabbi, anti-Zionism, And I don't understand the Jewish religion, Judaism. I don't understand. Even though I'm Christian, I don't understand Christianity that well. Islam, I understand Shia, Sunni, Druze, but I don't know the history of it. What the differences are, Muhammad and all that. So I don't know all these things, and I'm always confused whenever they mix theology with politics. Like we are the chosen ones for this land. I have a discussion with him, and he told me a story. So he's pretty extreme in his beliefs. He goes all the way that, because of what their religious book says, it says that they've been expelled out of Israel. So based on their religious book, the state of Israel should not exist. It goes against the wishes of God. You know about this already. This is just fascinating to hear. That is crazy to me to hear. But for me, look, I still think the state of Israel should exist. I don't think borders should be drawn based on religion. Anyway, putting that aside, he started telling me about a story. He's like, Mario, there was an incident where Ismail Haniyeh, the former leader of Hamas, who was killed in Iran, he was on stage, and then he called a few Jews that were in the audience. He's like, come up. There were Jews. I think he was there as well among them. And he called them up and he embraced them. He's like, we have no problem with Judaism. We have a problem with Zionism and the occupiers. Now, I'm not painting Hamas as the good guys, etc. I think I should. We're past the stage where we put these stupid disclaimers. But then he said to me, he's like, Mario, Hamas and the Arab world is not against Judaism. There's Jews living in many Arab countries, including Iran. Funny enough, I made a post saying since the Iran war, since October 7th, there's been zero retaliation on Jews in Iran. And people are like shocked. Really? There's Jews in Iran? I'm like, holy shit. People are really ignorant. Anyway, the point though is like, Mario, the problem is not about Judaism in the Arab world. It's about the occupiers. They're seen as the occupiers. They're occupying Palestinian land. If you have someone in Israel talking about a one-state solution, it's fine. You disagree with them, but it's fine. If you have a Palestinian talking about a one-state solution, they want to wipe out all the Jews, Holocaust 2.0, we should kill them. It's just that the way the information has been disseminated across the West, and you've given an example that people look at Hezbollah, Hamas as an enemy of the US, they would have nothing to do with the US if the US was not the first to instigate instability in the region. But the only issue, people don't know this, and it doesn't seem to be changing. I really hope Lebanon now is not going to be the same thing again, where the countries had gone through decades of civil war, is not going to descend again into civil war at the behest of another country that would benefit from it, and that's Israel. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, no, it's and add to that, if you have a chance, Tucker Carlson did an extended program on Wednesday about the Zionist persecution of Christians in the West Bank and throughout Israel. It's on an unbelievable scale, and it started with the desecration of a crucifix image of Jesus, that Israeli soldier was bashing the head of Jesus
in South Lebanon
with a sledgehammer.
Is that yeah?
Of course, I call that Jew on Jew violence, because Jesus was a Jew, and so here you have this Jew attacking and desecrating the image of another Jew. So I would argue the guy is an anti-Semite.
The most basic thing, like just going back to core basics, Jews and Christians and Muslims believe in the same God. Like, I swear, if an alien comes to this planet, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I understand, they all believe in the same God. They just have different interpretations of his messaging and the other people involved, like Jesus. But if you have an alien that comes to this planet, you have to describe to him the mess that has been caused in the region because of religion. It's not really religion. This rabbi I spoke with really said something else that really hit hard. He said, Mario, religion's been weaponized by Zionists for nationalist purposes. The goal was to achieve certain nationalist objectives. And Netanyahu was not even that religious. He's pretty open about it. He's given me examples how Netanyahu is not religious. But using religion as a base to achieve, just to grab more power and to achieve more influence, is what that movement has achieved. It's just such a fascinating conversation that I've had. I'll be publishing it tomorrow because I've never really explored it. It seems you know a lot about it, but it was just so fascinating to listen to. But it's also so heartbreaking. He's telling me about how his parents were dancing with Palestinians. In the old days, Palestinians and Jews got along in Palestine. There were no problems before the mess started and Nakba and all that. But there were no problems. And it's
well, apparently prior to the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran, there were like 150,000 Jews living there. I think the number is now down to 15,000, but there is a designated seat in the country's legislature there has to be at least one Jewish representative in the legislature. That's the Islamic law. And you're going, huh? Because when I shared this with a friend of mine, he was like, "Gee, I've been taught that Iran wants to kill all the Jews, and here they're allowing this Jewish community to thrive. In fact, I forget the general's name, but one of the generals in the Iranian army is Jewish." So
that's crazy.
It really is Zionism, and that's why I think it's important you do that show. It's not Judaism, it's not Islam, it's not Christianity per se that is the issue. It's this Zionism. It's an ethno-fascist concept, and it assigns and says just because we decide that if you are a particular kind of person, if you are quote Jewish, and the Zionists decide who gets to be Jewish, then you're entitled to all this land. Because God, who we don't believe in, gave this land to us. I mean, that's the other irony within Zionism. Zionism was founded by a bunch of atheists, people who had zero belief in God, which means, well, if you don't believe in God, then how can you even accept the concept that there's a land of Israel that supposedly God gave to Abraham through his descendants? So yeah, I'm fascinated to hear that you weren't raised in that milieu, and it's always I find it interesting that how someone like you, when you're confronted with this, you're looking at it going, what the hell's going on?
I've seen it all. As you know, I was born as an Orthodox Christian in Lebanon, and I've seen all of it. I've seen the weaponization of religion, because Lebanon had everyone fight everyone. So they had the Christians fight each other, even my family. So the reason you see me in the way I tweet and the way especially in my interviews, whenever I do interviews, I'm always trying to understand both sides, because I was like this as a kid. I saw my mom's side were like very supportive of one political party in Lebanon. It was Lebanese forces, Jaja. They were very supportive of Jaja. And then my father's side, they were very supportive of On, who was the president earlier, not the current president. On, another unrelated On. It was a different movement. And as in, when I say they were very supportive, extremely supportive. They have their pictures on the walls and stuff. And they were at one stage two brothers, and they currently both work in my company, funny enough. They were both two brothers in my mom's side. They were both going to go fight against each other in different armies as brothers. When I saw that, and I would hear, whenever I go see my father, my parents were divorced, I would hear how they talk about politics. When I go to my mom's side, how they talk about politics, I'm like, wow, these are both people that are my parents, and they look at things in such different ways. And then I made a decision when I was a kid, I remember where I made that decision. I'm like, I will never take any political sides ever, or ever have an opinion. I used to struggle. Now I have more opinions, but before I used to struggle to even get an opinion, because I've instilled that within myself. But in Lebanon, you had the Druze fight the Shiites, fight the Sunnis, Christians fight the Palestinians, fight the Israelis, fight the Syrians, and in Syria you got the Alawites and the Druze as well, and the Sunnis, and less so Shiites. So you got all these different sects, and I just feel like religion was weaponized in the region to extraordinary measures. Yeah. But what's most fascinating, Larry, is how unaware people are, and like, I see your frustration sometimes when you read certain statements or certain comments being made, and I know where it's coming from, because it is really upsetting when you feel people support wars and support aggression that kills a lot of people. The Iran-Iraq war that you always echo and you always bring it up, it was such a deadly war that the US was indirectly involved in, and in some ways instigated.
Yeah,
such a deadly war.
Yeah,
such a deadly war.
Well, and then the kicker on that was, as I've said and mentioned to you before, a good friend of mine, now deceased, Pat Lang, was the one for the last 2 years of that war hand-carried top secret intelligence, U.S. intelligence, showing the position of Iranian forces, showing their order of battle, what weapons they had in certain locations, who was in charge, etc. Information that was very valuable to the Iraqis to use for targeting and attacking and ultimately killing Iranians. Well, the reason he was asked to do that is during the Iran-Contra affair, it came out that the CIA was providing Iran with weapons, surface-to-air missiles, to be used against the Iraqis. And when Saddam learned that, he became enraged. He felt, because he had been working closely with the CIA, a guy named Tom Twetton, and then Twetton's successors. And so now he felt betrayed by the CIA, and he said, we're not going to deal with the CIA anymore. They're a bunch of two-faced bastards. And so he said he would only deal with the U.S. military. Now think about this. If the United States was just sort of a passive observer of this war, he said, if you don't want it from the CIA, you're not getting it from anybody, screw you. Oh, no. We made sure that, Colonel Lang, come, you need to go on and keep providing this information to Iraq. Why? Because we wanted to destroy Iran. And so that's where you wind up with all these, hundreds of thousands dead. And it's just, this is where, I am not anti-American, but I am, I share the Ayatollah Khamenei's cry of death to America, which was not, he didn't want to destroy America. He wanted to destroy this system that embraces war, embraces inciting war against other, where they fight on both sides.
It's more of the death to the American war machine. He's made that clarification, by the way. Yes. I researched that recently. He's actually made that clarification as well. He's elaborated. There's something that just came in while you're speaking. According to the Washington Post, Trump intends to invite Putin to the G20 Leaders Summit scheduled for December at Trump's Doral Golf Resort in Miami. The invitation hasn't been sent yet. How significant would that be if he invites Putin to G20, which he's been kicked out of the G20 for a while, hasn't he?
Yeah, it would be a sign of Trump wanting to, maintain the relationship with Putin. It would drive the Europeans crazy. But I'm not sure Putin, and this is, G20 also includes China. I'm not sure they'd go, because right now BRICS, you look at the BRICS countries in terms of GDP and control of the economy and such and resources, they're all far better off than the G20 if you exclude Russia and China from that. G20 is, sort of a backwater. I mean, England, France, Italy, Germany, economic powerhouses? I don't think so.
So he hasn't attended. So he hasn't attended since 2019. He skipped 2020, 2021 because of COVID, and then 2022 because of the invasion of Ukraine. The timing of this. Is there gonna be a role that Putin plays in kind of helping Trump clean up the mess or get some sort of settlement when it comes to the Iran war?
Well, they've offered. He's offered. The Russians have offered, because they have a way they can broker. They have entree to Saudi Arabia, to the other Gulf Arabs, also to Netanyahu. Now, you saw earlier this week, 40 Israelis were detained for about 5 hours at Domodedovo airport trying to get into Russia. And, the basic message.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they were basically told, you are attacking our friend, Iran. And we don't allow other countries to attack our friend. So that was the message was sent, that Israel did no longer had any kind of favored status in Russia.
Interesting. And that's the last thing I want to bring up is something I've been talking a lot about, is the future of Israel with all this. So I'm surprised to see Defense Minister Katz flexing that he wants to attack Iran, kill Khamenei, destroy their energy infrastructure today. I'm assuming that was at the behest of Trump. Trump doesn't want to make threats anymore and walk them back. He's done that way too many times. Yeah. So he's like, hey, Katz or Netanyahu, can you get someone in your administration to make those threats against Iran, to try to keep the pressure on them, because I'm trying to get an off-ramp and they're not giving it to me. Oh, it could be obviously completely different. Katz has a history of just making these outlandish statements. Yes. But, Trump could walk away out of this, Larry, and leaving everything as is, which includes we haven't talked about it, but Iran is controlling the Strait of Hormuz, charging a toll for all ships that go through, banning Israeli ships, charging an additional fee for any ships that were part of the war effort, that were part of the Iran war, any countries that were part of the Iran war, and not allowing any ships for countries that are sanctioning Iran, South Korea, Japan. There's a lot of them, so that excludes a lot of these countries, including Asian countries. So that's Iran's position. So they're going to use the Strait of Hormuz to get the sanctions off them. That could be their opportunities, leveraging the Strait of Hormuz to gradually get off the sanctions. But if that goes through, and it is going through, it's a reality. What's Israel going to be like? What is Israel going to do now to maintain power in the region?
Well, Israel's power in the region will have shrunk dramatically, and it's all a self-inflicted wound. They're not going to be able to defeat Hezbollah, and they will ultimately be forced to retreat. They used to have a pretty good relationship with Turkey. Now that's in the trash with the overt threats by even, I think Herzog did it with Turkey. So I think the Turks now recognize, we can't control or trust these guys at all. It'll be ultimately the global economic effect from having shut down the Persian Gulf. Did I use the tsunami example with you earlier? I don't think so. I've done so many of these interviews today, but I think we should look at the shutdown of the Persian Gulf and the effect on the world like the tsunami that hit Thailand. Because remember, when that tsunami first hit, everything looked peaceful. The ocean was drawing away from the shore. All of a sudden, you had a wide expanse of beach.
The 2011 one, the one 20 years ago, 10 years ago.
10 years ago, 15 years ago now. So all that water washed back and say, oh, look at this. People, hey, let's go out. And they're playing, walking farther out. Then the water comes rushing in. And so over the last 5 weeks, there's been a disruption, but nothing so concrete that we've seen actual genuine shortages of oil, general shutdown, shortages of jet fuel, diesel disappearing, food becoming a crisis issue. That's going to be hitting the world in the ensuing weeks, just as that flood of the water suddenly comes in. And that, I think, is going to play the primary motivator in trying to get these issues settled and trying to save the world, if you will, because several countries are going to be in dire straits, and the food supply system has been disrupted. We just haven't seen its full effect yet.
Trump, as we wrap up, Trump. Okay, hold on. Met today with high-ranking representatives of the U.S. delegation, Vance, Huckabee, etc. Met high-ranking representative of Israel and Lebanon in the Oval Office. The meeting went very well. The U.S. is going to work with Lebanon in order to protect itself from Hezbollah. The ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon will be extended by 3 weeks. I look forward to the near future to hosting the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, and the President of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun. It was a great honor, etc. So the ceasefire has been extended by 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's good. But
at least
again,
some positive developments. What happens? The question is, what will happen in 3 months and 6 months and 1 year? That's what really.
But what the West is going to try to do, and hopefully Lebanon doesn't fall for it, is build up the army and then encourage the Lebanese army to attack Hezbollah.
Yeah, that would be the worst.
And Hezbollah is not some small, isolated, fragmented group. It is it's big, it's integrated, and it's politically and economically strong. It's not a weakling. So, but Israel's preoccupied with getting rid of Hezbollah.
Larry, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for doing these shows, giving us your time. And I'm sure there's going to be many more to come as this continues to evolve. But really appreciate it, Larry. Thank you.
Well, hopefully this one wasn't as depressing as some of the last ones.
That was more positive. Yeah, I think your analysis of the statements by Trump, him quote tweeting Washington Post, and obviously the Lebanese situation. These are your analysis has been more on the positive side, which is good to see. At least short-term positive. Long-term, as you said, it's a tsunami. So we're going to see the consequences.
Exactly. All right, my friend. Take care.
Thank you, my friend. See you, Larry.
Bye.
All right, everyone. So interview. I hope you enjoyed today's interviews. Let me just give you a quick update here. So the post that I just read from Trump, this is pretty important. So everyone was waiting to see whether there's going to be a ceasefire in Lebanon. So the ceasefire has just been extended by 3 weeks in Lebanon. That is pretty significant. And Larry just said, the intentions behind the ceasefire is what matters. Now, some of my contacts behind the scenes are very involved in these negotiations, and they were pretty pessimistic at these negotiations. So for us to see the first week ceasefire go pretty well, there's been very limited strikes back and forth between Hezbollah and Israel in the south, no strikes whatsoever on Beirut, and very limited strikes by Israel, and also limited attacks by Hezbollah went both ways. That's probably one of the most effective ceasefires we've seen since the only effective ceasefire we've seen since October 7th. So that's a very important development for Lebanon. But I did say this before, the important thing is what Iran's strategy is going to be when it comes to Lebanon. And I think Lebanon is going to continue being a pawn. So what Iran could do right now is tell the Americans, like, hey, we will give up Hezbollah. When I say give up, I mean as a military arm. We'll give up supplying military equipment to Hezbollah, or the funds for Hezbollah to maintain its military presence in Lebanon, which is a threat to Israel, American ally Israel, in return for lifting XYZ sanctions or unfreezing X dollar amount of assets. So there should be something in return that Iran gets, because letting go of their proxy, some of you might call their ally, whatever you want to call it, the ally proxy, Hezbollah wouldn't exist as powerful as it is today as a military wing without Iran's support. So for Iran to give that up, their most important ally or proxy in the region, they have to get something significant in return. I'll give you a few more updates that happened today, kind of a recap, just so you're all in the loop. So the US ordered a whole bunch of JASSM cruise missiles from Lockheed Martin worth $6 to $7 billion. And we've heard explosions in Erbil. And this is related to the Kurds. That's the Kurdistan region. That's the capital of Iraq's Kurdistan region. This is Iran responding to potential rearmament on the Kurdish side. Iran is very worried right now that they're going to see protests as they saw in January. Or, Trump said that he rearmed the Kurds. He's offered a lot of military equipment to the Kurds. So Iran would be worried that these Kurds will be used as part of a regime change operation. So that's why we would have seen, I'm assuming, these strikes on what they call subversive parties in Iraqi Kurdistan. We had explosions today in Iran and yesterday. I've talked a lot about these, but for anyone that didn't hear it, that's more either testing the air defense systems. The MiGs were also in the air, and that could be there to intercept drones. That will happen today, and yesterday they were being tested. But there's been no attacks whatsoever. But Iran is preparing for a potential attack by not only maintenance and upgrades to their air defense systems, that's expected, but they're also developing a mosaic structure where the air defense system has become decentralized in Iran. So that means whenever there's a threat, they'll be able to intercept it, even if their command and control structure has been destroyed, because the commanders of these air defense systems or units will be able to make decisions independently. So the system will continue operating even though the commanders might have been targeted. So they're responding to the war that they've just went through and adapting accordingly in case it happens again. And the more they adapt, that becomes more of a deterrent. Now, you all might have seen the reports of an uprising in Iran. Trump keeps hinting that no one knows who's making the decisions there. It's hard to tell what's true or not. I've been talking about potential. I've been seeing indications of disagreements within the Iranian government. Now, obviously, disagreements happen in any government, but there've been contradictions as well, especially when Arachi posted that Strait of Hormuz is opened, and the IRGC Navy, allegedly, there's a recording of them saying, we won't listen to Arachi, we'll wait for our commander to make that call. And the Iranian media was also very critical of Arachi when he put out that statement. So it seems that there is some, I wouldn't say power struggle, but let's just stick to the words disagreements in Iran. But Iran has put out a post, multiple members, including I think the president, potentially Ghalibaf and others, put out statements, the same statement. They all put it together just to show unity and kind of they contradict the statement that was made by Trump about fractures within the Iranian government. A big statement that came in today by Defense Minister Katz, he said, we're waiting for the US green light first to finish off Khamenei dynasty and the entire Iranian terror regime leadership. Then we push Iran back to the dark ages, blow up their energy and electricity facilities and crush the whole economy. So that was made earlier today before the reports of explosions in Iran, which again, they're not an attack, interceptions of drones, but also Israel just put hospitals on emergency footing. And at the same time, they had a mini security cabinet convening as well. So having hospitals shifting to emergency status while there's a cabinet meeting is not a good sign. A lot of people are worried there could be something planned for tomorrow. We'll obviously be covering it. You'll see me live as soon as there's something major going on, live here and on X, and we'll have spaces as well. My team will do an immediate space. And of course, we post 24/7 updates. So if there's an explosion, we're one of the first to know about it. And another big development is there was a cargo ship, an Iranian cargo ship crossed the Gulf of Oman under IRGC naval escort. So the IRGC is claiming, and various reports are saying this is true, that they are escorting their own cargo ships throughout the Strait of Hormuz, despite the US blockade. And the IRGC claimed that the Americans tried to stop their escort, but they failed. I doubt it. I think the Americans tried to stop an escort, but the Iranians, militarily, if they tried, the Iranians would not be able to escort their ship. There's no chance they can, and they have any chance against the US Navy. So I don't think the Americans tried, and I think the Americans know about it. I know Larry and others say a blockade is very difficult to achieve. There's been other military experts on the show that said it's actually very easy to achieve. The blockade is not the issue, and their belief is that it's intentional that the Iranian ships are going through. Now, others, including Larry, say no, it's actually a lot more difficult than people make it out to be. And I think that's it. Like the last big piece of information, I've already gone through most of these things earlier. The last two big pieces of information is Trump posting something not enough people talking about. He posted a Washington Post article that's titled, it's by Mark Thiessen, Trump doesn't need a deal to get what he wants from Iran. It's a pretty significant thing because now Trump is openly saying, I'm happy to walk away from this. I don't need a deal with Iran. And lastly, the Strait of Hormuz control. So Iran has put out, the parliament has drafted a law formalizing new rules for the Strait of Hormuz passage. Sorry, the law hasn't passed. I've been saying it's passed. It's only been drafted. Tolls must be paid in Iranian rials before any vessels are granted passage. And as I've said just a few minutes ago, Israel's blocked, and any countries that are sanctioning Iran are blocked. And any countries that participated in the war have to pay additional fee on top of the toll that all ships have to pay. That's pretty much it. That's kind of the updates, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Let me see what we have tomorrow for you guys. I think we've got about 5 interviews again tomorrow. There's one interview I did today that has not been released. Tomorrow we have a lot. Well, we have Ali Vaez as a new guest. So Ali Vaez is in Iran's nuclear policy, diplomacy, and regional strategy. So he's an expert and an analyst on Iran. He's director of Iran projects and senior advisor to Crisis Group. So he's going to be on the show tomorrow. We also have Colonel Mark Kansian. I think it's the first time we have the Colonel on to discuss the war. We got Piotr Kurzin, who's a regular on the show. He'll be coming on. He's got his own channel as well on YouTube. We've got Nadim Kotesh, who was meant to be there yesterday but had an issue. He'll be on today. He's from Sky News. We've got Peter Schiff. It's been a while we haven't had him. You all know Peter Schiff. That will discuss the economic impact of this war. It's good to get his take on the war. Again, we spoke in the early days of the war. And lastly, we have Dr. John Gartner, who will be talking about Trump's mental state and policy consequences. Interesting. So that's something a lot of people have been talking about. I disagree with them, but I'm willing to have them on and kind of go back and forth on whether Trump is, it's just it's going through some mental issues now. Trump is obviously, pretty old. Let me see his age now, 80. He is 79 years old. So at that age, you start to potentially be more likely to have mental issues in some form, mental difficulties. Larry thinks he has dementia, etc. I believe that his decisions have been pragmatic. I've been shocked by this decision to go into this war. I can't explain it. Multiple explanations. I think he was misled with faulty intelligence. The reason he got into this war is confusing, but the decisions he's taken since, as you know, I think he's made the right decision, and that is to stop the war despite all the pressure and even say, I'm willing to walk away even if we don't get a deal. But the war itself, that's perplexing of why he got into this war. Anyway, guys, 7 hours worth of interviews today. The rabbi's interview where we discussed Judaism and Zionism. And that was a fascinating conversation. I learned a lot. So I will be publishing that tomorrow. Keep an eye out for it. It's an incredible discussion. I think you learned a lot of things you didn't know about Zionism, Judaism, Israel as a state. And I'll probably have another conversation with them about it as well. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.